Hello everyone, welcome to my new series, The Weekly Soapbox, where I talk about things in the news relating to media, communication and writing that rile me up or that I have questions about. I'm going to kick off with a discussion about Bill C-18, which was recently enacted in Canada. Big disclaimer here, I am not a legal professional, I am not a policymaker, and when I actually tried to read Bill C-18, I couldn't make head or tail of it. Why can't people write legislation in plain language that's easy to understand? I don't get it. Anyway, I ended up getting most of my understanding about this bill from this article, which I will try to remember to link in the description of this video. The gist of Bill C-18 is that the giant digital companies such as Facebook and Google are going to be required to compensate Canadian news organizations for the ability to share their content. So, for instance, if someone posts a link to a Toronto Star article on Facebook, then Meta, who owns Facebook, will have to pay Toronto Star. This whole thing came about as a result of media companies losing out massively by recent trends for people to basically consume news for free. According to this CTV article, almost 70% of Canadians access news online, but only 11% pay for it. And I get it. Whenever I've encountered a news article that's behind a paywall, I've gone and looked for another source of that particular news instead of paying for it. So where people used to buy newspapers every day, take out their subscriptions to the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail, there's no need for that now. When is the last time you purchased a newspaper? I mean, I'm sure some people still do, but for the most part, we just don't have a need for it anymore. Bill C-18's intent is to redress the imbalance that has resulted from companies like Meta and Google profiting from ad revenues while the media companies lose out. And Canada isn't the first country to do this. Australia enacted a similar bill a while back, and it's important to note that these laws allow for negotiation between the news companies and the platforms. Toronto Star can strike a deal with Meta to continue to have their news shared on Facebook. Here's the issue though. When Australia brought in their laws, the big tech companies negotiated with the media companies. Deals were struck and Australians can still get news from Australian media companies on Facebook and Google. This has not happened in Canada. Meta and Google are not playing ball. They have outright stated that instead of negotiating, they're just going to block news content on their platforms for Canadians. Meta has taken this to quite an extreme. They haven't just blocked news from Canadian providers, which is what I thought they were going to do. We're not seeing news from any media companies, even the non-Canadian ones. CNN, BBC, the Washington Post. We're getting none of it. I'm still seeing news on Google, and I believe they have said that when their media block is implemented, we'll still be able to see news from international companies. So, what is my opinion on all of this? Do I blame the Canadian government? Not really. Canadian politics is quite divisive right now, but when it comes to this issue, I get what they're trying to do. And like I said, it's been done in other countries. I see this as the Canadian government trying to protect Canadian interests, which is exactly what they're supposed to do. I think the real villain here, if there is a villain, is the likes of Meta. They entered into negotiations with media companies in Australia, and they could have done the same thing here. They chose not to. Instead of coming to some kind of compromise as they have elsewhere, they've decided to act like corporate bullies. I think their expectation was that the Canadian government would cave, and they're throwing a hissy fit because that hasn't happened. We need to remember that Canadians still have full and easy access to the news. All of the media companies, the Toronto Star, CTV, CBC, and all of the others, the Globe and Mail, they all have websites. We can go to those websites anytime we want and consume whatever information is available on there. A lot of Canadians, particularly the ones opposed to the current government, are acting as if our access to news has been taken away. It hasn't. We just have to be intentional about going and looking for it. We're not going to just stumble upon news articles as we scroll through our Facebook feeds. At the end of the day, I don't think Bill C-18 is going to impact our lives very much. For a start, Canadians are going to get used to getting their news in other ways. Frankly, relying on Facebook's algorithm for accurate news is probably not a great idea anyway. Far better to just go to the source, i.e. the media companies themselves. And secondly, people are going to find ways around this. I've already seen that people are taking screenshots of news articles and sharing them as JPEGs. And there's nothing to stop me as a writer from creating and sharing blog posts about major news events and including links to articles in those blog posts. In other words, this situation may be a nuisance now, but it's going to solve itself. Humans are nothing if not adaptable, and we'll adapt to this easily enough. At the end of the day, money talks, and companies like Meta and Google will do whatever is going to generate the biggest profits. Meantime, Canadians have an opportunity to gain more control over the news they're seeing instead of relying on social media feeds. What's your opinion about this? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.